what is the longest word in the written Torah? So the Rambam talks about words that are written in a manuscript. Of course, in the old times, we only wrote Torah and Tanakh. The entire Hebrew Bible was only written in manuscripts. There were never, not only printing press didn't exist in the times of Rambam, in the times of Maimonides, something like 700 or 800 years ago. But not only that, but even the books that used to exist before the printing press, there used to be books that were written in the same format as today's printed books, meaning there would be pages and they would be sewn together in a form of a book. That also was not done by the Jewish people in the ancient times. In the times of the Talmud, for instance, the only written Torah books were written in a kind of cloth, meaning the type of skin that is worked on a certain way, not on paper, but on cloth, which was sewn together into one long parchment that is then circled around these wooden, or maybe from other materials you could make those poles. So that's the type of manuscripts which are Sifrei Torah today. That was how all of Tanakh was written. In fact, there are still some synagogues, by the way, that own not only the Sefer Torah. Of course, the scroll of Torah exists in every Orthodox synagogue. Also, the scroll of Esther, the book of Esther, exists. But there are some synagogues that have scrolls of prophets as well. So there's a scroll of Yirmiyahu, for instance, the scroll of Yeshaya, the scroll of Yechezkel, etc. So every book of prophets is a separate scroll, and written like the Sefer Torah on many parchments that are sewn into one long. They're sewn together not as a book, but in one long material which is encircled around the poles. At any rate, when the Rambam discusses how the words of the Torah are written, he discusses for some reason words that are longer than 10 letters. Now, in our 5 books of Moshe, there is no such word altogether, but there is one place where there is a word that is exactly 10 letters. And that is, of course, in our Parsha. Now, of course, in Hebrew language, the prefixes and the various suffixes and the endings are written all in one word. So something that would be 3 or 4 words sometimes in English can still be one word in Hebrew. For example, the word end is not a separate word, but it's just a letter vav before the word. The letter vav means end. And an ending might be something that says yours. I recently made a series where I discussed the Hebrew grammar a little bit in the context of prayer. And I translated every word of the main prayer, what's called Shmona Esrei, and I explained some of these things. So this is, of course, familiar to everybody who knows even the minimal Hebrew, that in Hebrew language, the word is not what we would call in English a word. It's really a few words in this case. So the particular word in this week's Parsha, in this week's reading, Vayera, that has 10 letters, is the unique word in the 7th chapter, 28th verse. Uve misharotecha. That's 10 letters. This is very unusual because Hebrew roots are pretty short, generally 3-letter roots. But here there is a vav in the beginning, which means and then a vet, which means in. It's a preposition, but it's all part of the word. And it means in some kind of kneading bowls, where the dough was stored by the Egyptians. The frogs would enter those places too. Chait and means yours. So in, and in, vav and vet, and then chait and your, and the actual word itself is these containers in which the dough is. So what did then the Maimonides mean when he wrote that there are words that are more than 10 letters? It's possible that if our manuscripts of Maimonides are correct, there are sometimes differences in the manuscripts, but if this is correct, when he said 10 or more letters, he might have not meant exactly more than 10. At least in the 5 books of Moshe, there is no such thing. But what is very likely is that he didn't mean in the 5 books of Moshe, but he meant in other manuscripts. And in particular, there are 3 places in the entire Tanakh and the entire Hebrew Bible which have 11-letter words. And one of them is the book of Esther. Also, it's some kind of a Persian word. There are a few Persian words in the book of Esther, and one of them spells, again, with all the headings and everything, ends up having 11 letters. It's the 9th chapter of the Megillat Esther, 3rd verse. It's some kind of a Persian governors. They're mentioned a few times, but in this full form with the letter Vav in the beginning, that makes altogether 11 letters. Ve'ahash tarpanim. Whatever that means, it's a Persian word, obviously, and certainly the Hebrew dialect made it sound a little bit different. We know that, for instance, the word Achashverosh himself, the king, Greeks called him Xerxes. The majority of commentators say that that's the king we're talking about, but the Hebrew is the one that adds the aleph for various reasons, because it's hard to pronounce in Hebrew something that starts with just a few consonants. So Achashverosh, the actual consonants fit pretty well to the Persian name of this king, Shayarsha or something like that. The consonants fit, but the vowels are somewhat different. This is not uncommon, of course. Just like in every language, whenever you translate the name or transliterate the names, they're pronounced differently than the original language. So I don't know how Achash Darpanim was pronounced in the ancient Persian, but probably it's not exactly like that. But these are some kind of officers. So that's one place, and there's 2 other places in Nevi'im, I think in Yecheskel, that are 11-letter words. So could be that Rambam was talking about those places. As I said, everything was written in manuscript. Certainly the book of Esther, everybody writes in manuscript in order to fulfill the mitzvah. You cannot fulfill the mitzvah by reading from a book. It has to be written as a scroll. So in the Torah we have 10-letter word, one unique 10-letter word, and in the other books of Mikra, of Nevi'im and Ktuvim, we have 11-letter words. And if you like this video, please press like.